Hey, what's going on? Welcome to Black and Black Times
Infinity.
Got another S-Class interview. This time with Joe Illidge from Lion Forge Comics. He's a senior editor. How you doing, Joe?
Hey, how you doing tonight?
Doing great. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, this is actually... I wanted to have this interview for a while once I first read your Lion Forge Comics, actually in particular Catalyst Prime. I didn't even hear about it until one of our listeners had brought it up. And I had no idea what it was about, but they know my thoughts on diversity in comics, and they thought it'd be perfect for me, and they were absolutely right.
Well, okay. Well, I'm glad you liked it. We put a lot of work into that.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely shows. I was actually concerned that I wouldn't be able to get the comics locally because I didn't know how well the distribution was. But luckily, my local comic shop that's like right around the corner happened to get them. So I was very happy. But then I missed the Free Comic Book Day version of it. So I didn't get to. I started reading Noble before I read like the precursor.
I mean, that's okay. I think we wanted to set it up that way that you could either read Noble first or you could read Catalyst Prime, the event first. So whichever way someone enters the Catalyst Prime universe, it's all good.
Yeah, it works perfectly. Actually, let's talk a little bit about who you are and your background in the industry, because I didn't know about you until we were interfacing on Skype a few times. I'm not on Skype, but on Twitter a few times. So can you tell us about your background?
Sure. I started in the comic book industry with Milestone Media, Inc. Milestone was the first black-owned mainstream comic book company to have a publishing deal with an industry giant, which was DC Comics.
Nice.
And so I started there as an editor, and then I moved over to DC Comics, where I was the first person of color to be an editor of the Batman editorial group.
All right.
And while I was there, a variety of things that I did included editing the Birds of Prey title.
Awesome.
I was there for the creation of Cassandra Cain, the Asian Batgirl and the best Batgirl, basically, and the creation of a detective named Crispus Allen, who showed up in the Greg Rucka run of Detective Comics and ended up on, at the very least, the first season of the Fox show Gotham. And from there on, I took a break from the comic book industry for a few years and learned about book manufacturing. And what that taught me is that no matter how good the content is, if the printing quality of the packaging isn't good, it's going to diminish the content. So after that, I was a comics editor for Archaea, an independent publisher that produced a lot of creator-owned comics, and Archaea would go on to be acquired by Boom Studios. And after that, I was a columnist for Comic Book Resources and also for a sports website called Shadow League. And then I started as the senior editor for Lion Forge Comics last year. And my main responsibility is to be the editorial showrunner for the Catalyst Prime superhero science fiction line of monthly comics.
Oh,
that's a hell of a resume.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Really quickly, can you give us a little bit of a background on what Lion Forge is about?
Lion Forge Comics is a black-owned multimedia company owned by David Stewart II, and the chief creative officer is Carl Reed. The president of publishing is Jeff Gerber. Jeff Gerber is the person who brought me on to Lion Forge Comics, and Lion Forge started off doing comic books based off of NBC licenses such as Knight Rider and Airwolf, and then after a few years entered into a publishing deal with IDW, and then after a few years of that basically became a full service operation, which began last year, 2016, and with the company deciding to grow and become a major player in the industry, they brought on a lot of new staff, and I was one of those people. And so now Lion Forge is a full-fledged publisher with a variety of different imprints. The main Lion Forge imprint, under which Catalyst Prime Prime is covered, basically creates content for young adult to adult. The Catalyst Prime books are for 13 and up, though. And there are 3 other divisions. One is called Cub House. Cub House is for emerging readers, so basically kids ages 4 to 8. Then we have Roar, and the Roar line is basically like our YA line, so think 10 to 17. And then we have the Magnetic Collection, and the Magnetic Collection was formerly an independent graphic novel publisher called Magnetic Press that specializes in high production quality graphic novels, a number of which are foreign imprints, foreign books that are translated into English and then sold in the English market either in graphic novel format or serialized in comics. And Lion Forge bought Magnetic Press, so the owner of Magnetic Press, Mike Kennedy, came on as the creative director of the Magnetic Collection. So we have 4 different imprints, and we just got through with San Diego Comic-Con, and that was the company's first opportunity to show the industry books from every imprint, and we got an amazing reception, and that, in a way, from a company perspective, is the opening salvo for what Lion Forge intends to do in comics and graphic novels in the direct market and outside of the direct market.
Oh man, that's awesome.
Yeah, see, I knew we should have went to Comic-Con this year.
Yeah, we missed out this year. So Lion Force seems to have some heavy hitters in the comic industry. How did you manage to recruit some of these great talents for a lot of the comics that you have out?
Well, basically, you know, because of my tenure in comics, because of the values that I have continued to discuss and advocate for, which are diversity of talent, which are diversity of characters, which is diversity of staff, which is high quality, and which is recognition of creators at every level, writer, penciler, inker, colorist, letterer. Those values and my time in this business have basically allowed me to have a group of friends and Rolodex that I could call on for an endeavor like Catalyst Prime. And Catalyst Prime is basically meant to represent the best of what superhero and science fiction comics could and should be in the North American space and beyond. And so when I started calling people, they know what I'm about, they knew what this was about, they knew that we were going to go full-fledged to make the best comics, and they were on board. Look, it's reality, so you don't get everybody.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty happy with the group I have.
You can almost sound like you're like Professor X calling upon your X-Men or something like that to kind of help you out with something.
Yeah, in a sense. I mean, when you think about what the X-Men represent in our society, and quite frankly, the fact that I don't have a lot of hair on my head, I would say that analogy actually works perfectly in a sense. Although
you're not in a wheelchair either, right?
These days, it might actually be closer to Nick Fury and the Ultimates.
Oh yeah, that makes more sense.
For a lot of reasons, that might be a better analogy.
You're like Samuel Jackson's.
Exactly.
What, based on your extensive resume, I'm curious, just on a personal level, what inspired you to become so passionate and get into this career field? And then it's sort of a two-part question. And the second part, when you realized that you had the chance to help diversify comics, was it a moment that you had when you were already in the industry, or was it something that you felt needed to be addressed in like your upbringing and when you early on started reading comic books?
Wow, okay. So let me see if I can answer this accurately. That's okay. So my, I guess, interest in comics, really started from when I was a kid, and I was a DC fan, but I read my first X-Men comic, and it kind of changed my life. And I have been interested in getting in the business since I was right out of college, like really seriously pursuing a career in comics. And Milestone was my first job, my first employer in comics. So starting off at Milestone for a company that established the first truly multicultural universe of relevant superhero fiction by a diverse group of talent, that kind of helped set my values at that point in my life. In terms of moving forward with this passionately and the opportunity to really advocate further, for me, it really crystallized when my friend and mentor Dwayne McDuffie died. And after mourning him, I realized that my job was to continue his work.
Nice.
And so that's what I'm doing.
Awesome. So what do you think about the current climate in diversity with other comic book companies? Because I think one of the reasons why Catalyst Prime in particular appealed to me is that, in my mind, you guys are doing diversity the way it should be. So what are your thoughts on that as far as like other companies, just the overall thoughts of diversity in comic books right now?
Well, look, it would be fair to say that we've come a long way, but the industry has many miles more to walk. And Catalyst Prime is the criticism. Catalyst Prime is the model of values and images and creators and mythology and ideas of what the superhero science fiction space could and should look like. So I feel like my time vocally criticizing other companies for their deficiencies and their perpetuation of policies that marginalize people who are different from white heterosexual males with all working limbs. The time for that vocal criticism has ended because Catalyst Prime is the statement.
It's a great statement. For me, one of the things that sets it apart is that I don't feel like I'm being pandered to when I'm reading a Catalyst Prime comic. When I read other, these new diverse comics, it seems like they're just trying to hit a demographic and they're trying to tell me, within like a paragraph, exactly what this character is about, instead of letting it be story driven and me learning about the character, over a series of comics. Like with Noble, there's still a lot of mystery there. I'm 3 comics in. I kind of know the character, but not really. And you're not telling me that, hey, this guy is black. These are his thoughts. You're telling a story first, and then I'm coming to my own conclusions through the story, not just you telling me how to feel about this character.
Yeah, it's more organic.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad that you see that in the material, because to me, diversity isn't something that you have to try to do. It's actually something that you have to try not to do. Because if you look at the demographics of America, if you look at the demographics of the creator pool in comic books, what direction could you look in? What direction could you throw a stone in and not come across a person of color, not come across a person from the LGBT community, not come across a person who is disabled? I don't know. So to me, you would have to make efforts to navigate around people from various groups to end up with practically culturally monolithic staff and creator pools and things like that. So diversity is intrinsic in our lives. It's intrinsic in Lion Forge Comics, and so it's intrinsic in Catalyst Prime. And quality is something that we all want. no matter what walk of life we come from. We want the best characters, the best stories, the best books. So quality is what's going to last. Quality is what's going to make an impact. If I have to pander, then something is wrong there. So basically what the creators and I are looking to do is create the best books.
Awesome.
Yeah, with a lot of comics nowadays, a lot of them are recycling their characters and just kind of making them a new ethnicity. Like, for example, like the Kid Flash, they made him black. We see it with
Thor.
They made him into a female.
Yeah, same thing with Wolverine.
Incredible Hulk. We have the Asian Hulk and stuff like that.
Female Hulk.
Yeah. So with Catalyst Prime, like, what came up? How did you come up with the idea to make it be so diverse within the comic book universe?
Well, the Catalyst Prime universe, in its very nucleic state, was created by David Stewart II, Carl Reed, and a group of their allies. And so I was given a 4-page document, and it was my responsibility to get a group of creators and build upon that and create a fully fleshed superhero science fiction universe mythology that could stand toe-to-toe with the other publishers. And so the ethos of a diverse world came from that nucleus. It came from the values of David Stewart II and Lion Forge. And so my values align with those values, so expanding upon that was easy. That's basically, those are the values in which I live on a daily basis. And, you know, in terms of other companies and how they're handling their intellectual properties, to me the problem isn't necessarily when you take a character and you change a character. It's why you're doing it. Mm-hmm. It's how does that impact the character, the story? What does that say in our time? And it's the execution. Because Jason Aaron's Thor, that's a top-notch book. And it doesn't matter if Thor is a woman. What matters is that he and Russell Dauterman and the team that they have, they're putting out a top-notch book. It's when you see a shift in a character and the result that you get reveals a lack of understanding, a lack of empathy, a lack of research, a lack of, in some cases, proper editorial guidance. Mm-hmm. That is where we get the problems, right? So I think intellectual properties are fluid to some degree, and the decisions that are made should be decisions in the best interests of the character. And whether that's taking an existing character and making a change or having the courage to create a new character.
Yeah.
Right? Because to me, the worst thing is when you take a black character and you give him the identity of a white character and everyone knows the clock is ticking and eventually that character becomes the black character that character was before. Then the question becomes, well, why did you have to change that character at all if you were going to revert that character back to his or her original identity in 4 years? Right? See, that's the problem. That's when it comes off as a gimmick.
Yeah, well, I think that these, other, comic book companies, I think they're honestly scared to make a new diverse character. I mean, they've made these, sort of feeble attempts to make these, quote unquote new characters, but they're just other characters just kind of copied and pasted.
Rehash.
Like we're not getting legit background stories. We're not getting legit new powers. We're not getting, other philosophies or anything like that. And it's the thing that really bothers me about some of these ethnic and gender swaps is when they do that, but then they don't give any sort of significance on them being a different ethnicity or gender. It's just them being that, that new character, but they're not really new. They're just copy and paste. And that's That's what I don't
right. No, I totally understand. Well, the great thing about Catalyst Prime is it's new. People can get in on the ground floor, and when it comes to creation and development of characters, we're pretty fearless.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like I think I know. So I've been reading. Superb just came out a little while ago.
That's right.
I believe I heard that he's supposed to be an autistic character, correct?
The one of the two characters in Superb, because it's a duo, it's a teenage black girl named Kayla Tate and a teenage young white man named Cosmosis. Cosmosis has Down syndrome.
Down syndrome. Okay, gotcha. And that, like, and if you read the first comic, you won't even know. You just think that he's some guy with cool powers, and that's what I like about it. Because in the first comic, you don't know the character all the way yet, which you shouldn't. If you read the first comic, you shouldn't know the entire background story of this person.
Right, and the thing is, the character has Down syndrome, but he's not defined by Down syndrome. He's defined by his humanity. He's defined by being a character that people can identify with. And it's part of what Lion Forge is doing in conjunction with the National Down Syndrome Society, which is really to shine a light on people with Down syndrome and help the larger society to understand that people with Down syndrome are no less capable of the many things that you and I are capable of. Right. And capability can be magnified in the superhero genre. And Lion Forge is not the first company to have a superhero with Down syndrome, but through the company's partnership with the National Down Syndrome Society, it's a great opportunity to have superhero comics make an impact on a larger scale.
You had mentioned briefly and touched on the intellectual properties and sort of coming up with unique ones. Would you say that might be the most difficult challenge when it comes to creating a comic book universe? Most of us, obviously, we read comic books and we love them, but the whole concept of creating an actual universe in itself is something that's kind of mind-blowing, at least to me it is. So I'm kind of curious if you can give a little insight on, I guess, how you wanted to form that universe, besides having it be extremely diverse.
Okay, well, did everyone here read Catalyst Prime, the event, the free comic book day one-shot?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So, basically, one of the things that we did was create a singular event that would be the origin and the access point of this new mythology, and from that we can define how the universe works. Okay. And one of the underpinning forces of the universe is science, and science is very much an influential force in all of our lives in almost any way that you could think of, from your smartphone to your food to your clothing to our communications right now. And so with that, we knew that science and we knew that a singular event had to basically be the origin for this universe. And by doing that, you're able to engage themes naturally. The worst way to go about it is to say, oh, I want my Superman, I want my Batman, I want my Captain America. Mm-hmm. Anyone can do that, and the fact of the matter is original ideas are hard to come by, but distinctive approaches to paradigms and character profiles that we're familiar with, that I think is what makes something interesting. So I think one of the reasons that people were taken by the Catalyst Prime the event one-shot is because of the revelations of Act 3. And that was one of the ways, in addition to a character like Lorena Payan, who's basically a wealthy Mexican female billionaire, those are the kind of things that immediately set us apart from the competition, and I think make the statement that this is going to be a different kind of a universe. And while it utilizes some of the familiar elements of the superhero genre, in a number of ways, I consider it more science fiction. Again, because science plays such a major role in the universe.
Yeah.
Right.
That plot twist at the end of Catalyst Prime was pretty epic. I was
Yeah, it was.
I immediately hit up Kronos and was just like, "Whoa!" Didn't see that one coming.
Yeah. It's something that Christopher Priest and I set up, and to be fair, he is really the mastermind of certain things, and his mind is diabolical, and he doesn't believe in doing things in the way that you expect. And so once we came to the conclusion of what Lorena was going to do, then you have to figure out why. And then when you figure out why, you can build her entire life towards that motivation, and then that motivation influences her actions going forward. And so, one thing that I've seen women say on the internet and heard women talk about is not wanting to be put into boxes as characters. And so I feel like a character like Lorena Payan is a unique contribution to the superhero and science fiction genres of North American comics. And she's a character that I'm very proud of and I have a particular affection for. Oh, yeah. So I think people are going to be very interested to see what she does going forward, and I think she's going to constantly surprise people.
Yeah, that was pretty awesome. I actually had a problem actually finding the one shot. Are you guys going to reprint these? I had to rely on Twitter for somebody to send me one.
Yeah, the one shot is actually available for free on Comixology.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's how I was able to read it.
Awesome.
So you can get it there easily and download it. And if you Google Catalyst Prime, the event, Comics Beat, the Comics Beat website is also hosting free access to the one shot, because we wanted to make sure that everybody could get a copy, and a number of stores ordered it and they ran out by early in the afternoon, so people who came later on weren't able to get it. We were giving out free copies at San Diego Comic-Con, so sorry y'all didn't make it there, but again, if you go to Comixology, you can download it for free.
Awesome. That's good information.
I had a question. So, given this event with Catalyst Prime, what was your team's inspiration for sparking off this whole universe?
Well, I really think it comes down to making the best stories, making compelling characters, and making stories that they would not be allowed to make at other companies. I feel that the natural inclination of a creator is when they have the opportunity to create things without shackles, that's when they're really going to go to town and show you what they're made of in a variety of ways. So from a company standpoint, there aren't really a lot of shackles with these characters, and from an editorial standpoint, I try to work with the creators, invite new ideas, invite debate about our different perceptions of characters, and no two books are the same, and in some cases I'm less hands-on than I am with others because of just the different dynamics that are happening in each book. So the inspiration really comes from the opportunity to be more creative and the desire to make the best comics.
awesome.
Nice. So you had mentioned how you were kind of the first black editor for Batman comics. I just had a quick question. Do you have like a plaque in your house that has like a little logo that says "I'm the first black Batman editor"? That's pretty dope. And I feel that you should have like a day in February for Black History Month with your name on it.
Yeah.
You are very kind. There is no plaque, but it's a badge that I wear with pride because I understand what these things mean. And the same way someone like Christopher Priest, as far as I know, was the first black editor in mainstream comics, you know, that meant something to me.
Oh yeah.
The fact that a company like Milestone was the first of its kind distinctively, that meant something to me. It meant something to other people. So, you know, when I say it, it's not really to brag, it's really to identify these benchmarks in history so people understand that there was a time when that just wasn't so, right? We think about the status quo and we don't understand that some of these things are relatively new. You know, it's almost like black people owning homes. You know, or black people being allowed to vote. So many people don't understand that it's not that long ago when neither of those things were possible, when neither of those things were legal.
Yeah.
So
I'm sure a lot of
what
our
I try
parents
to
had
do
to
when
deal
I
with
talk
that.
about my career is help provide some historical context to the changes that have occurred in the industry.
Honestly, I'm so happy that this, you know, company even exists. I'm kind of pissed though that I'm kind of late to the game. You know, you already had like a couple comics out before I even heard about it. But once I did hear about it, I was all over it. And we're actually hosting a panel on at San Francisco Comic-Con this year, and we're definitely going to talk about Catalyst Prime in particular, because what we like to do is like to give people examples of good diversity and bad diversity. And obviously this is going to be on the side of good, but you know, it's going to be nice this year to talk about more good things than bad, because I think last year we talked about some diverse comics, but
We did.
most of them got, like, a lot of them got canceled.
Yep.
Yeah, I was just like, I'm so angry about it.
Especially there was one that was kind of near and dear to us because it was about the area we lived, and it was by a famous writer, Jimmy Robinson.
Yeah, Power Lines.
Yeah, Power Lines, and that was canceled.
Right.
And that was a super diverse comic, and it had a great, intriguing story, and then it didn't get a chance to fully mature. So
Yeah, by Image Comics, I remember that title. Yeah, well, you know, we really appreciate the future inclusion in your panel. What month is that going to be?
It'll be in September. We have a panel on September 2nd. So
Okay, well, by that time, we'll have 4 monthly titles out, because Incidentals, which is the next one, which is going to be penciled by Larry Stroman, bring him back to monthly comics.
Nice.
That comes out August 23rd. And right now we have 4 issues of Noble out. Noble number 4 just came out. We have 2 issues of Excel. We have 1 issue of Superb. So by that time, there'll be even more books out, and our launch is going to be continuing through the rest of the year. So by December of this year, we'll have 7 monthly titles.
Nice.
And, you know, it's a very exciting time for all the failings of the industry. There's a lot of possibilities. There's a lot of things still to be done, and I'm honored to be able to help make a positive contribution.
Hey, did you guys time this release? Because it seems like you guys started release, like it came out at the exact right time that we needed.
Well, you know, the unfortunate thing is that we've needed this for some time.
Yeah, for sure.
And fortuitously enough, and I mean no ill will to either of the two titans, but various things that have happened with both companies this year spotlighted the need for Catalyst Prime more than ever. So there interdealings and complications did help pave the road for us, but there's no way you can plan it. You don't know what the industry is going to be like at any given time. But what Lion Forge and myself and the creators were well aware of was that Catalyst Prime was long overdue. And there are fans and readers, and they have been asking for something like this, and they've waited far too long, and they've invested money and time and emotional faith, and it's time for that to be rewarded.
Awesome, and we are, at least I'm being rewarded. And everybody I talk to that's into comics, I'm talking to them about Catalyst Prime. So it's definitely a highest recommendation for me. So, yeah, I know we only have so much time with you, so I guess we can wrap now because we're a little over 30 minutes. So, anything you'd like to say?
How people can reach out to you?
Yeah, we can find you.
Oh, sure. Well, again, thank you for having me and allowing for this discussion. And basically, I can be reached on Twitter at Joseph P. Illidge. Last name is spelled Illidge. On Twitter at Joe Illidge. Instagram, Illmaster1.
That's pretty pimp.
I felt like an A name.
Yeah, that's kind of like my parallel universe.
You have a mixtape with that name.
I know, right? In case you become a rapper.
Exactly. Yeah, just in case I have to transition to another career, I wanted to have some options. And lionforge.com is where you can find Lion Forge comics and see the different imprints. You can find them at Lion Forge on Twitter. You can also follow at Catalyst Prime on Twitter. And we're very appreciative of the positive response that we've received so far for Catalyst Prime and for our books. And our goal is to bridge all gaps between ourselves and the audience that wants books like these and has earned books like these and no longer needs to beg parties that only see them as cash registers for acknowledgement and recognition.
That's true.
Awesome. Those are all excellent points. All right. Thank you very much, Joe, for this interview. Have a good rest of your day, okay?
Thank you very much. I'll have a good evening now.
Yeah. All right.
Take care.
Goodbye.